I have a Ryzen 5 5600X with a stock Wraith Stealth cooler and I switched it with Peerless Assassin by Thermalright. Let's see what happened. First, let's see what was the situation with the stock cooler at stock settings of the CPU, so PBO was set to auto in the BIOS. The idle temperature was maximum of 57 degrees Celsius, but most of the time it was hovering around 50 degrees mark. While playing Doom the Dark Ages at 1440p with DLSS quality, the CPU temperature was between 61 and 77 degrees with an average of 72 degrees Celsius. The power consumption was 75 watts and according to hardware info, there was no thermal throttling. The 10-minute run of Cinebench R23 gave 9,589 points for the multi-core test and 1,447 points for the single-core test. Maximum temperature of the CPU was 70 degrees Celsius. A quick check on the web showed that this score for the multi-core test was around 20% less than what users are reporting for this CPU. And I also noticed that the frequency of my 5600X during the test was maximum 3.9 GHz, which again was less than what the internet was saying is normal, 4.2-4.3 GHz for all the cores. Hardware info was still saying that there is no thermal throttling, but obviously something was off. Next thing was to enable PBO. I bought my CPU in early 2022, so I don't care about warranty anymore. I changed the Precision Boost Overdrive in the BIOS from auto to enabled and rerun the tests. This time multi-core score in Cinebench was 10,898 points, which meant 11% improvement. The frequency was better, between 4.2 and 4.3 GHz all cores, but the temperature was 95 degrees with power consumption of 125 watts. Still no thermal throttling according to hardware info, but definitely not a setup I was comfortable with. In Doom the Dark Ages, I didn't see any noticeable jump in the frame rates at 1440p with RTX 4070, but the CPU temperature was higher with 10 degrees and reached 87 degrees Celsius. Power consumption was also increased by around 22 watts or 27%. It was time to remove the very good in terms of budget stock cooler and replace it with Peerless Assassin, which was also a very budget-friendly product. With the new cooler installed and the PBO set back to auto, it was time to rerun the tests. The idle temperatures were between 30 and 48 degrees Celsius, but most of the time it was hovering around 37 degrees, which was 13 degrees lower or 26% difference compared to the stock cooler. In Doom, the CPU was hitting 4.65 GHz all cores almost all the time, and the max temperature I saw was 54 degrees. That was 23 degrees lower than the stock cooler, or difference of 43%. In the multi-core test of Cinebench, the Peerless Assassin kept the 5600X below 53 degrees Celsius with maximum power consumption of 76 watts and core clocks in the range of 4.05 to 4.125 GHz for all cores. That resulted in 10,372 points or 8% increase compared to stock cooler, with a 24% lower temperature or 17 degrees difference. The single core results were not much higher, 1,519 points compared to 1,492 points with the stock cooler. The CPU temperature was significantly lower though, 49 degrees compared to 75 degrees. It was time for the PBO test. In the multi-core test of Cinebench, the score was 11,743 points, which was 8% higher than with the stock cooler. The maximum CPU temperature was 78 degrees Celsius, which was way better than the 95 degrees with the stock cooler, and the clock speeds were a solid 4.65 GHz all cores. What I didn't like was the power consumption, 132 watts, but everything comes with a price, right? And definitely the tower cooler handled the unlock setting of the CPU way better than the stock cooler. The single core result was pretty much identical to the one with the PBO set to auto, 1504 points with 49 degrees maximum CPU temperature. So what was the summary of this upgrade? In terms of CPU temperature, while idling, the Peerless Assassin made a difference of 13 degrees or 27%. While playing Doom the Dark Ages, the temperature was 23 degrees lower or 30% difference. In the multi-core test of Cinebench with PBO set to auto, aka stock configuration, the difference was 16 degrees Celsius or 23%. When tested with a single core, the temperature was 26 degrees lower or 35% difference. When PBO was set to enabled, the CPU temperature in the multi-core test was 17 degrees lower, which was 18% difference, and in the single core test the difference was 22 degrees, or 31%. So a difference between 18 and 35% in the different cases. In terms of multi-core performance, Peerless Assassin increased the Cinebench score by 8% compared to the result with the stock cooler, both when the PBO was set to auto and when it was set to enabled. In the first case the CPU temp was 16 degrees lower, in the second 18. At the end, a few words about my opinion regarding Precision Boost Overdrive. With the stock Wraith Stealth cooler, I saw increase in the all-core frequency of the CPU from around 3.9 to around 4.25 GHz and a Cinebench multi-core score increase of 14%. But I also saw CPU temperature of 95 degrees and a power usage of 130 watts. That all meant that I definitely wouldn't use that with the stock cooler. With Peerless Assassin, things looked way different. While the Cinebench score had the same 14% increase, here I saw a solid 4.65 GHz frequency at all cores at 78 degrees maximum CPU temperature, which was quite acceptable. But everything comes with a price, and that price was the power consumption. PBO off meant 76 watts CPU consumption, PBO on 132 watts, or 74% more power consumption for 13% higher score. I would say it's good to know that I have the option to get some more performance for heavy multi-core loads, but I wouldn't enable it by default for everyday use. Let me know what you think. So what do I feel about this upgrade? I absolutely love it. The processor is working at way lower temperatures and is reaching higher frequencies, the cooler is much quieter, especially under load, and it looks freaking awesome. Yes, it cost me extra $38, but it's worth every last one of them, at least in my personal opinion. That was it for this video, thanks for watching and see you in the next one. Happy gaming!